My name's Drew Grit, and today I'd like to talk about Steve Lacy's production style. If for some reason you're watching this video and you're not into Steve Lacy, first of all, what are you doing with your life? And second of all, you'll still benefit from this video because the ideas and techniques explored can be applied across any genre and are 100% effective in making your songs better or your money back, guaranteed. Terms and conditions apply. If I had to describe Steve's music, I would say it sits somewhere in this weird zone of between like Prince and Weezer. He's a member of Odd Future Offspring, The Internet, and a solo indie broski in his own right. He's got production credits across the industry, with maybe his most high profile being on Kendrick Lamar's Damn and producing the track Pride. I've spent a lot of time over the past few years listening to his music, and as a producer there's one thing that really stuck out to me. His drums slap. Like, his drums slap harder than my grandmother when I tell her I'm not hungry. I spent months experimenting with my drums, trying a million different things, a million different techniques to get them as good as his, and eventually I just gave up because I got to a point where I was actually happy with how my drums sounded. However, fast forward many months later and I'm on a website that I spend a lot of time on, Who Sampled, and for some reason I had never typed in my favourite indie artists like Steve, Claro and Mac DeMarco. Mac, who funny enough I met at a Steve Lacy gig, and then boom, I found out Steve had sampled a number of drum breaks in his tracks. I don't know why I expected these indie artists to be doing completely their own stuff and not sampling, but there's really a lot of interesting stuff on there and it was stupid to assume that they wouldn't be. What this allowed me to do was backwards engineer some of his tracks, and in the process I learned a lot of interesting things. So first I'm going to break down his song Some, more specifically the drum production, and then I'm going to move on to showing you how I made the song in the intro, which is of course in the style of Steve Lacy. Okay, so this is what Some sounds like. And this is the original sample of the drums, which is, interestingly enough, from the Gundam anime soundtrack. So obviously that's quite different there, and I took that, backwards engineered to get the Steve's version, and this is my version. So here's an A-B between my version and Steve's. Obviously the bass gets in the way there, but you can tell that the processing is pretty much the same. It's not going to be exactly the same because of course he did it on Garageband and I'm doing it on Ableton, but the processing ideas still apply. So to get from the anime sample to Steve's processing, there's 3 main elements and then 3 sub-elements to consider. The first main element is lowering the pitch. Sometimes Steve will just lower it and that will work out what the tempo is. Other times he'll warp it in time first and then lower the pitch. Either way, for this example he warped it first to 104 and then lowered the pitch by 1 semitone and 39 cents. So here's it without the pitching. Here's it with. That already makes it a bit fatter. The next step is adding saturation, the second main element. I use the preset on Ableton called A Bit Warmer. I love it, but the thing that makes me laugh about it is if you use it, you'll know if you drop that on the wrong channel, your head is coming off your shoulders. But I've dropped the dry wet down a bit, adjusted it to hard curve. I'm not going to go into the specifics of all these plugins because I don't think the specifics matter. I think the things to take away is the type of processing, because these settings work for this drum break, but they're not going to work for all of them. You have to adjust all your parameters depending on the break. So here's what it sounds like with the saturation. Quite a difference there, brings out a lot of the dirt and stuff like that. Next element is one of the sub elements. I used the drum sharpener preset from Drum Bus in Ableton. I reduced the transients, which I wouldn't normally do, but I think it just helped get to the same sort of aesthetic that Steve achieved. This is what it sounds like. You probably need earphones to even be able to tell the difference there, and that's one of the reasons I consider in this sub-element category. If you don't have Ableton and you don't have access to Drum Bus, it's not to worry. I don't think this is one of the most important, but yes, play around. If you've got some sort of Drum Bus or transient shaper, you can try that to make your drums punch more. That's a very common process and it might work for you. The next is another main element, which is compression, tending to be heavy compression. I used the mildly aggressive preset here, and this is what that sounds like. Same thing as before with the saturator and the drum sharpener. It just adds a bit more of that sort of dirt and background noise and brings up the sort of heaviness. Finally, to get it to sound like Steve's, I found this problem frequency and took it out. So this is a sub element I would consider it to be fixing with EQ. You're not going to hear that, but if I turn the gain the other way, you'll be able to hear what I've took out. That's the EQ fix. And then finally, I added an EQ boost in the low end to give it more weight. You can hear how much fat that adds to the kick drum, but as I said before, it really depends on the break. You're not necessarily going to have to do this all the time, but it's definitely something to investigate. Those drums in the original sample sounded quite light, and by the end of it, you've got some heavy drums. And essentially that's it. To recap, pitch it down, heavy saturation, heavy compression, play with drum bus, transient shaper if you want, fix any EQ problems that may have been there or came up with all your added processing, and then EQ boost. Okay, so next I want to look at the drum production on his song Looks. Sounds like this. And that is a sample by an artist called Chove Chuva, I don't know, and a song called Samba Soul. It sounds like this. Vastly different. With this example, I haven't tried to perfectly replicate the drums. All I'm trying to do with this example is show you the effect of the pitching down. So this is that sample down 4 semitones and 4 cents, which is roughly it. Another reason I didn't even try and replicate it is there's a million versions of this song online. He could have used any of them. They all sound different, but it's still, you can see here how much pitching has an effect on the sound that he achieves. Next, I want to look at the song Thangs, which sounds like this. The sample for that is from Parliament, Do That Stuff. Sounds vastly different, a million times lighter. So what I did was pitch it down 8 semitones, added a bit warmer, gentle squeezed, and then a bit of mixed gel and mildly aggressive, and got somewhere close. Didn't try and replicate it exactly, just sort of tried to show the processing type. So as you can see there again, doesn't take that much to get close to that exact sound. Next step, we're going to look at my Steve Lacy type beat. By no means is this a fully fledged Steve Lacy track. This is the bare minimum. I'm pretty much just showing how these techniques can be used. The first thing I did was find this drum loop, which has plenty of character and rhythm, which is typical of Steve Lacy. And what I did to change that is I pitched it down 1 semitone, and then I added a bit warmer, surprise surprise, some RC20 on this cassette first generation setting, and then some gentle squeeze, which is a compression preset that just gets it to where I like it a lot of the time. You don't always need heavy compression, it's more of a taste thing, but yeah, I like gentle squeeze, and this is what the drums now sound like. And then we'll do an A-B. There's a lot more weight and dirt and just generally sounds a bit better to me. So if you're like me and you're a waste of space producer that can't play any instruments, getting some guitar on a track can be difficult at times, especially trying to find something in the style of somebody else. Funnily enough, Lander allegedly has you sorted. They have this playlist that makes me laugh so hard. I like Lander, I use it. As you can see there, I've got 497 credits. And yeah, this lo-fi guitars playlist. It says in the description, so go on, get that Steve Lacy sound, which I find hilarious because listen to any of these and you tell me that they sound like Steve Lacy. Like, what is that? Either someone has lied on their CV to get this job to do this playlist, or it's been done by AI, but I'd feel bad saying that about AI. I feel like it could do better. But anyway, I did manage to find a guitar sample from Cymatics. It sounded like this. And what I did was I pitched it down a couple semitones, 2 semitones, and I added some EQ, cutting off low and high, guitar rig on the clean break setting. Next I added some RC20, let's see what this is on, depth for plucks, added CLA Echosphere, and finally I added an auto filter to sort of just tame some of the highs that are created by those effects. So altogether that sounds like this. And then all together. And finally, I just added some micro cassette noise also from Cymatics, which is just in the background to give it some, you know, tape hiss and dirt to really make it that sort of lo-fi indie sound. And there you have it. It didn't take that much to get to that Steve Lacy sound. Like if you listen to that, it almost sounds like a full track, even though it's just drums, a guitar and some cassette noise. Like that's nothing, but it was good enough to demonstrate what type of things can be done. Please, please, please don't let the takeaway from this video be, okay, cool, now I can go make Steve Lacy songs. We already have Steve Lacy, we don't need copycats. The takeaways from this video should be, number 1, experiment. Play around with different effects, try different things, keep trying new things. And yeah, maybe the first thing you should try is experimenting with some drums. And you may be thinking, Drew, where do I get cool drum samples? There's a number of different places. There's a drums archive that I use called Rhythm Lab. It's very easy to use. There's no account needed. You just click and the audio downloads. It makes me laugh because it says for educational purposes. And that's exactly what I've been using it for. Also, if it's your first time playing with drum breaks, there's a good pack called All the Breaks, which has like most of the most famous breaks and is a good place to start for any beginners. What you may have noticed about Steve's drum choices is they're quite unique. That unfortunately is your own thing to find out. Where do you get them? Who knows? That's part of the fun. The second takeaway should be keep it simple. Steve's whole ethos is about keeping it simple. The majority of his songs have been made on his iPhone by just plugging in his guitar into Garageband. He even has a TED talk talking about this idea of the bare maximum, which if you're a Steve fan, I'm sure you've seen, but if not, definitely check it out. And the third thing is just try and find your own style. Try and do your own thing. It may take time, but everyone gets there in the end. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. This is only my second YouTube video, so I'm on like minus subs right now. Also, I've got videos coming up on Claro, Kanye, and lots of other fun stuff. So yeah, there's plenty more in store. So stay tuned for that, and thanks for watching.